All right, let's talk about the difference between employees and independent contractors. Now, when you discuss the difference between employees and independent contractors, it can get a little complicated because who's an employee can vary depending on the context that you're talking about. There's technically a different test for federal taxes, and there's certain exemptions, exceptions that could apply. But generally, in California at least, you have what's called an ABC test. That's three elements that must all be true in order for somebody to be considered an independent contractor. Otherwise, it falls to the default as an employee. Number one, A, the amount of control. So for the first element, the amount of control that an employer or the hiring entity exercises over the person that they have hired needs to not go beyond the result of the product or service. In other words, there can't be things needing to be done in a certain way. And this can really vary. So it's definitely one of those it depends type situations. For option two, letter B, the question is whether or not the person that has been hired to do work is doing work in the ordinary course of business of the hiring entity. It sounds kind of complicated, I realize, when you say it like that, but basically boils down to if, for example, a store sells clothes and they hire a plumber to do some work at the store, it's probably a little bit of an easier answer to that being no, they're not doing work within the ordinary course of the business. Of course, it depends. Now, third, letter C, is probably the toughest one for a lot of employers to meet, which is the person that they have hired to do work for them must be operating an independent business. To sum it up, you need to have the hiring entity not to exercise too much control over the person they're hiring, to have hired them and to provide services outside their ordinary course of business, and to have hired someone who's holding themselves out as an independent business. Absent any one of those three elements, and that person is probably an employee under California law. So give it some thought. And for more about your rights in California, like and subscribe.